one of the most revealing things about attraction is that the truth often appears before words ever do. Long before a man openly admits his feelings, his behavior begins to shift in subtle but noticeable ways. And one of the clearest moments where this happens is in the way he greets you. Now, on the surface, a greeting seems small. It's just a hello, a smile, a reaction when he sees you. But psychologically, greetings are incredibly revealing because they happen instinctively. They are often less filtered, less calculated, and more emotionally honest than the conversations that follow. In those first few seconds, you're seeing his immediate emotional response to your presence. When a man is secretly in love with you, his energy changes the moment he sees you. You can feel it. His face lights up slightly. His tone becomes warmer. His attention sharpens. Even if he's tired, distracted, or focused on something else, there's a noticeable shift in him when you enter his space. And that shift is difficult to fake because it's emotional before it's intentional. This is important to understand because people naturally reveal what matters to them through energy. We become more alive, around the people we deeply care about. Our body language opens up, our expressions soften, our focus narrows toward them almost automatically. A man who is emotionally attached may try to stay composed, but his nervous system often reveals the truth before his words do. You'll notice it in small things. He greets you faster than he greets others. His smile lasts longer. His voice changes slightly, sometimes calmer, sometimes more excited. He may straighten his posture without realizing it or suddenly become more attentive to your reaction. These behaviors are not random. They are emotional responses rooted in attraction and emotional investment. What makes this especially powerful is that it often happens unconsciously. A man who secretly loves you may not even realize how different he becomes around you. He may think he's acting normal, while everyone around him can already sense the change in his energy. Because genuine feelings create emotional leakage. The heart communicates through behavior long before the mind decides to confess anything. There's also a deeper psychological layer here. When someone matters to us emotionally, seeing them activates anticipation and reward in the brain. Their presence becomes associated with comfort, excitement, curiosity, or emotional relief. So when he sees you, he doesn't just see a person, he experiences an emotional shift internally. And that internal shift naturally affects his external behavior. This is why greetings matter more than people think. They reveal priority. They reveal emotional significance. A polite greeting can be given to anyone, but emotional energy cannot. Emotional energy always follows emotional attachment. At the same time, it's important not to focus on one isolated moment. Anyone can have a good mood one day. The real truth is in the pattern. Does his energy consistently change around you? Does he repeatedly become more engaged, more present, more alive when you appear? Because consistency is what separates casual friendliness from deeper emotional interests. And when you begin to recognize these subtle shifts, you stop relying only on words to understand attraction. You start observing behavior, energy, emotional responsiveness, the things people struggle to hide when feelings are real. Because in the end, love often reveals itself in the smallest moments first. Not in dramatic confession, but in the unconscious happiness someone feels simply because you walked into the room. Once you begin to notice the change in his energy around you, another pattern often becomes impossible to ignore. The level of attention he gives to the smallest details about you. Because when a man is secretly in love, his interest is not generic. It becomes personal. He doesn't just see you, he studies you in ways even he may not fully realize. This is one of the clearest differences between casual attraction and genuine emotional investment. Casual attraction notices what is obvious. Real emotional attachment notices what is specific. The little things, the subtle changes, the details most people overlook. A man who has deep feelings for you will often remember things you mentioned casually weeks ago. He'll notice when your mood is slightly different, when you change something about your appearance, or when your energy feels off even if you haven't said a word. And what's interesting is that he may not consciously decide to remember these things. Emotional attachment naturally sharpens attention. Psychologically, this happens because the brain gives more importance to people we feel emotionally connected to. We become more observant around them. Their words carry more weight. Their habits become familiar. Their emotional state starts to matter to us. So when a man secretly loves you, your details stop feeling random to him. They begin to feel meaningful. This often shows up in the way he greets you. His greeting feels tailored to you, not automatic. He may reference something you said before, ask about something important to you, or immediately notice something others miss. Maybe he says, "You seem tired today," or "You changed something, didn't you?" These moments matter because they reveal presence. He's not interacting with you on autopilot. He's emotionally tuned in. And emotional attentiveness is a powerful thing. Because in modern relationships, many people hear words without truly listening. They react without observing. But when someone remembers the little things about you, it creates a feeling of being genuinely seen. And being seen deeply is one of the strongest strongest emotional experiences a person can have. What makes this even more significant is consistency. Anyone can notice something once, but when a man repeatedly pays attention to details, it reveals sustained emotional focus. It means you occupy space in his mind even when you're not physically present. He thinks about your conversations later. He mentally stores information about you. He emotionally revisits interactions because they matter to him. There's also an emotional vulnerability hidden inside this attentiveness. Because when someone notices details about you, they are investing mental and emotional energy into understanding you. They are moving beyond attraction into emotional curiosity. And emotional curiosity is often the beginning of deeper love. At the same time, this attention is rarely loud or dramatic. In fact, it's often quiet, subtle, easy to miss if you're only looking for grand gestures. But real feelings are usually revealed through consistency in small moments, not intensity in isolated ones. A man who secretly loves you may not always know how to confess it directly. He may not have the courage yet to fully express what he feels. But his attention gives him away, because people naturally prioritize what emotionally matters to them. And this is why you should pay attention not only to how a man talks to you, but to how carefully he observes you. Does he remember the details? Does he notice the shifts in your mood, your energy, your behavior? Does his greeting feel personal rather than routine? Because in the end, love is often hidden in attention. The people who care deeply about you reveal it not just by wanting your presence, but by truly noticing who you are. As that emotional warmth becomes more noticeable, another behavior starts to reveal itself very clearly. He looks for reasons to keep the connection going. A man who is secretly in love rarely wants the interaction to end quickly. Even during something as simple as a greeting, there's often an unconscious desire to extend the moment just a little longer. This is one of the most overlooked signs of emotional attachment, because attraction is not only about excitement, it's about attention and presence. When someone deeply values your company, they naturally resist emotional distance. They look for ways to stay connected, even in small interactions. You'll notice this in subtle ways. He asks an extra question after the conversation should have naturally ended. He lingers instead of immediately walking away. He finds a reason to continue talking, even if the topic itself isn't important. Sometimes he may even restart the interaction after it's already fading, simply because he doesn't want the moment with you to end. Psychologically, this behavior reflects emotional investment. Human beings naturally prolong experiences that create positive emotional stimulation. When someone's present, he makes us feel energized, understood, or emotionally fulfilled, we instinctively seek more time in that emotional state. So when a man secretly loves you, your presence becomes emotionally rewarding to him, and he unconsciously tries to extend that reward. What makes this especially revealing is that it often happens without planning. He may not even realize he's doing it. He simply feels drawn toward maintaining connection with you. And because emotional attachment influences behavior beneath conscious awareness, these small moments become incredibly honest indicators of what he feels. There's also something deeper happening here. A man who keeps extending conversations is not only seeking interaction, he's seeking emotional closeness. He wants to feel included in your attention. He wants to remain part of your emotional space for just a little longer. And that desire reflects more than casual attraction. This is where many people misunderstand communication in relationships. They focus only on what is being said instead of why the interaction keeps continuing. But emotional interest often reveals itself through persistence of connection rather than dramatic statements. Sumo, who deeply cares about you, usually finds it difficult to leave your emotional presence quickly. You may notice him maintaining eye contact longer than necessary, smiling after the conversation has technically ended, or continuing to engage even when there's no practical reason to do so. These are not random habits. They are emotional signals. They reveal that he values not just the conversation itself, but the feeling he experiences while being connected to you. At the same time, this behavior creates emotional intimacy gradually. Small extended moments build familiarity. Familiarity builds comfort. And comfort often becomes the foundation for deeper emotional attachment. So even these seemingly insignificant interactions carry psychological weight over time. There's also vulnerability hidden inside this desire to continue the moment. Because when someone prolongs interaction, they are quietly revealing that your attention matters to them. They enjoy being emotionally seen by you. And people rarely seek emotional presence from someone they feel indifferent toward. Of course, no single moment proves love on its own, but consistent patterns do. If a man repeatedly finds ways to remain connected, repeatedly stretches small interactions into longer ones, repeatedly seeks more emotional presence with you, it usually reflects something much deeper than politeness or casual attraction. Because in the end, people always make more time for what emotionally matters to them. And when someone secretly loves you, even goodbye becomes difficult because connection with you feels emotionally meaningful. As these interactions continue, something even more revealing begins to emerge, not just in isolated moments, but in patterns over time. Because anyone can appear interested once. Anyone can have a charming conversation, an emotional reaction, or a warm greeting on a good day. But what truly reveals hidden feelings is consistency. This is where emotional attachment separates itself from temporary attraction. Temporary emotions are unpredictable. They rise and fall depending on mood, convenience, or circumstance. But genuine emotional investment tends to create reliability. A man who secretly loves you doesn't just show interest occasionally, he repeatedly shows up with the same emotional energy whenever he sees you. And that consistency matters more than most people realize. A man who has real feelings for you will often greet you warmly no matter the environment, no matter how busy he is, and no matter how much time has passed since the last interaction. The enthusiasm may not always be dramatic, but it remains present. There's still attentiveness.
Still emotional responsiveness.
Still a sense that your presence genuinely affects him. Psychologically, this happens because emotionally significant people become mentally prioritized. The brain naturally allocates more emotional energy and attention toward what feels meaningful. So when a man consistently reacts positively to your presence, it's usually because seeing you continues to trigger emotional value inside him. This is why patterns are so important in relationships. Words can be influenced by the moment. Even behavior can sometimes be performative in short bursts. But sustained consistency is much harder to fake because it requires emotional authenticity over time. Watch the little things. Does he consistently notice you when you enter the room? Does his energy repeatedly shift around you? Does he continue making effort even after the initial excitement should have faded? These repair behaviors reveal emotional investment far more honestly than grand declarations ever could. There's also a deeper emotional truth here. Consistency creates emotional trust. Human beings feel safest around patterns they can rely on. So when a man continuously shows warmth, attentiveness, and emotional presence, it slowly builds a feeling of stability around him. You begin to sense that his interest is not random, it's intentional. And this intentionality matters deeply because real love is not only a feeling, it's sustained attention. It's choosing again and again to emotionally show up for someone in both ordinary and meaningful moments. At the same time, consistency reveals seriousness.
A man who is casually interested often fluctuates.
His effort depends on convenience, mood, or immediate reward. But a man who secretly loves you tends to remain emotionally connected even without immediate validation. His behavior stays relatively stable because his feelings are internally driven, not externally dependent. What makes this especially powerful is that consistency often appears most clearly in ordinary moments, not dramatic ones. The way he greets you every morning, the way he remembers to check in, the way he instinctively acknowledges your presence every single time. These repeated acts create emotional patterns that become impossible to ignore over time. There's also vulnerability hidden in consistency, because to consistently show warmth towards someone is to quietly reveal that they matter to you emotionally. It means your feelings are not temporary reactions, they've become part of your emotional routine. And that's why consistency should never be underestimated. It may seem less exciting than grand romantic gestures, but psychologically, it's one of the strongest indicators of genuine emotional attachment. Because in the end, love is rarely proven by one powerful moment, it's revealed through the repeated choice to show up with the same care, the same attention, and the same emotional presence over time. Once you begin to recognize the consistency in his behavior, another layer of understanding becomes possible. You start to realize that his greeting is no longer just about attraction, it's about emotional attachment. Because there's a profound difference between someone enjoying your presence and someone feeling emotionally connected to it. Attraction is often immediate and physical. It creates excitement, curiosity, intensity. But emotional attachment goes deeper. It creates comfort, familiarity, emotional dependence on someone's presence. And when a man secretly loves you, even the smallest interaction with you begins to carry emotional meaning for him. This is why his greeting often feels unusually genuine. It's not simply a social habit anymore. It's an emotional reaction. Seeing you affects him internally, and that internal feeling naturally expresses itself outwardly through his voice, his eyes, his attention, and his energy. What's fascinating psychologically is that emotional attachment changes the emotional value of ordinary moments. Things that once felt small suddenly become significant. A simple hello becomes the highlight of his day. A brief conversation stays in his mind longer than it should. Your presence begins to influence his emotional state in ways he may not even fully understand himself. And this is often where hidden love reveals itself most clearly, not through dramatic confessions, but through emotional sensitivity. He becomes more emotionally aware of your reactions, your moods, your response to him. Because once attachment forms, your emotional world starts to matter to him personally. You'll notice this in the way he reacts to your energy. If you seem distant, he notices. If you seem happy, it affects him positively. If your greeting feels colder than usual, he may quietly overthink it afterward. These are signs that the interaction is no longer surface level for him. Emotionally, he is invested. There's also something deeply human happening here. People naturally seek emotional connection with those they secretly love. They want reassurance, closeness, acknowledgement. So when a man consistently lights up around you, it's often because your presence satisfies an emotional need he has developed internally. This doesn't mean obsession or unhealthy dependence. Healthy emotional attachment simply means someone's presence genuinely contributes to your emotional well-being. And when a man feels this towards you, his behavior becomes emotionally charged in subtle but meaningful ways. What makes this powerful is that attachment usually reveals itself through consistency in ordinary interactions. He doesn't need a special occasion to show emotional warmth. Even everyday greetings become infused with meaning because his feelings are now integrated into the connection itself. At the same time, emotional attachment creates vulnerability. Because once someone begins to emotionally value another person deeply, their reactions begin to matter. Approval matters, attention matters, emotional closeness matters. And this vulnerability often leaks through behavior long before it's verbally admitted. This is why observing emotional patterns is so important. A man who secretly loves you may never directly say it at first. Fear, uncertainty, or timing may hold him back. But emotions have a way of expressing themselves indirectly, through energy, through attention, through consistency, through the unmistakable emotional warmth someone carries whenever they see you. And when all of these signs begin to align together, the truth becomes difficult to ignore. Because attraction may create temporary excitement, but emotional attachment changes behavior in lasting ways. So when a man greets you with genuine warmth, sustained attention, and emotional presence again and again, understand what you're really witnessing.
You're not just witnessing politeness or flirtatiousness.
You're witnessing the quiet ways love begins to reveal itself before the words are ever spoken. Because in the end, the heart often confesses through behavior long before the mouth ever does. When you put all of these patterns together, his energy shift, his attention to detail, the warmth in his greeting, the way he extends interaction, and his consistency over time, something becomes very clear. What you're ultimately seeing is not just attraction, but emotional attachment forming beneath the surface. And emotional attachment is what changes everything. Because a man who is secretly in love doesn't just interact with you casually. Even when the interaction looks simple on the outside, there is something internally significant happening for him. Your presence starts to carry emotional weight. You are no longer just someone he sees, you are someone he feels. This is why even small interactions begin to matter more than they should. A greeting is no longer just a greeting. It becomes a moment of emotional recognition. A brief conversation is no longer just communication. It becomes a point of emotional connection. And over time, these small moments accumulate into something much deeper. Psychologically, emotional attachment creates a sense of internal priority. The mind begins to place importance on the person who consistently triggers emotional responses. That's why he remembers your presence more than others. That's why he reacts differently around you. And that's why his behavior becomes subtly more intentional whenever you are near. But what makes this even more interesting is how unconscious much of it is. He may not actively decide to feel this way. Instead, it develops gradually through repeated emotional experiences. Each interaction reinforces the connection. Each moment of warmth strengthens the attachment. And without realizing it, he begins to associate you with emotional comfort, curiosity, and significance. This is where emotional depth goes beyond surface level attraction. Attraction alone is often impulsive. It comes and goes, but emotional attachment builds a psychological link. You become part of someone's internal emotional landscape, and that changes how they respond to you in even the smallest ways. You may notice that his behavior around you feels slightly more careful, more attentive, more emotionally aware. He may choose his way towards more thoughtfully. He may become more present in conversations. He may even seem slightly more invested in your reactions than in the actual topic being discussed. These subtle shifts are not random, they are signs of emotional involvement. At the same time, this attachment creates a quiet vulnerability, because once someone begins to care emotionally, they start to become affected by your responses. Your attention matters more. Your distance feels more noticeable. Your presence becomes emotionally significant in ways ways they cannot easily ignore. And this is often where hidden love becomes most visible, not through declarations, but through emotional sensitivity, through the way he reacts when you're around, through the way his energy changes when you leave, through the way your presence seems to stabilize or excite him in subtle, consistent ways. There's also a deeper philosophical truth here. Human beings are not emotionally neutral creatures. We bond through repeated emotional experiences. We attach ourselves to those who repeatedly influence our emotional state in meaningful ways. And when that bond begins to form, it becomes part of how we perceive reality itself. So what? Can a man secretly loves you, his greeting, his attention, his consistency, and his emotional warmth are not separate signs. They are all expressions of the same internal process, a process of attachment slowly forming beneath conscious control. And once you understand that, you stop looking for dramatic proof of love. You start recognizing it in the quieter, more consistent ways someone chooses to emotionally show up for you. Because in the end, love is rarely announced in a single moment. It is revealed through a series of emotional patterns that quietly build until they can no longer be hidden.